Okay. A very good evening to all of you. And this is Dr. Mandakini. A very warm welcome to all the viewers. Today we are here for the 101 session of the Virasat Talk Lecture Series organized by the Archaeological Exploration and Excavation Department of Heritage Society, Patna. I present my sincere thanks and gratitude towards our viewers and followers who contributed directly or indirectly for the success of all the sessions of the society with their constant support and encouragement. I also request all the viewers to share the link to your colleagues and related groups so that the knowledge can be shared to more and more people. The live streaming of the same will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website shortly. It is my great privilege and honor to have the distinguished resource person, Dr. Rekha Pande, in today's session. She is a professor of history and director of SEED, Hyderabad. She is also a former head of the Center for Women's Studies, Maulana Azad, National Urdu University, Hyderabad. She has more than 20 books and over 100 research publications to credit in her academic voyage. She is a dedicated and true scholar and given contribution to various fields including women and gender studies. So now coming to the today's topic or this session, the title of the topic is representation of women in Deccani miniatures from 15th to 18th century, and it is very interesting. Women is an important phenomenon of the society, and without her the existence of society is inconceivable. We cannot imagine the role of the society. Indian miniatures are also having the same projection of women on a larger scale, where we can see the vulnerable imagery of women. She is an object of desire. She most of the times represented as an object of male desire, and the lecture is also having the same insight on the topic and the approach. Now I request Dr. Rekha Pande ma'am to share the intensive views about the representation of women in Deccani miniatures. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Mandakini, and good evening to everyone. I really want to thank the Heritage Society for having me here. And I think I have looked at some of your videos, some of the other kind of work that you are doing. And I was really amazed at the kind of services that you all are providing. And today, I'm going to speak on miniature paintings in the Deccan, and I'll try to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Can you see my presentation?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible. You need to click on the main content. That's it. Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about miniature paintings, and there are so many of these miniature paintings that it is really not possible in this talk of 1 hour or so to discuss everything. So I'll be picking up few paintings and focusing more on women. Now, before I start, I would like to start with a quotation from Jane Austen. And in a book, The Northanger Abbey, which was published in 1803, there is a character called Catherine Morland. And she says, "Yes, I am fond of history. I wish I were too. I read it little as a duty, but it tells me nothing that does not either vex or weary me. The quarrels of popes and king with wars and pestilence in every page, the men also good for nothing, and hardly any women at all in it. It is very tiresome." To take another quotation by Virginia Woolf in A Room of One's Own, which she's writing in 1929, and she says, "What one wants, I thought, and why does not some brilliant students apply it, is a mass of information. At what age did she marry? How many children had she as a rule? What was her house like? Did she have a room to herself? Did she do the cooking? Would she be likely to have servants? All these facts lie somewhere, presumably in parish registers. The life of an average Elizabethan woman must be scattered about somewhere. Could one collect it and make a book out of it? It would be an ambition beyond my desire. So, these two quotations really tell us that we have nothing in history about women. Our whole perception of the past is from a very male perspective. We somehow present women's history as being universal. The whole framework, concept, priorities, they all reflect male interests, concerns, and experience. And women comprise of such a large population. Women have always contributed to history. See, when we talk of kings, dynasties, if the women did not give them birth, where would these dynasties or king be? So we need women for the recreation of a total picture. Now, the biggest problem in women's history is, we need the archives. You need historical sources to write history. And all the archives are about men talking about their experiences, their history. So, how do we really write women's history? For the modern period, you have a lot of autobiographies, you have journals, newspapers. Now, when we look at medieval period in Indian history, it is dominated by a tradition called Indo-Persian tradition of history writing. See, these were court scholars who were writing. They were only talking about the happenings in the court. Women were not even present there. They were just behind the screen. And so all that is being written about is only about dynasties, political histories, men's contribution. So therefore, when we want to write women's history, we have to search for new sources. And miniature painting becomes a very important source. Before I talk about miniature painting, if we look at how paintings developed, prior to 8th century in India, we had walls, murals, frescoes, which were there. But you had Ajanta, Ellora, those kinds of huge, large scale painting. But after 8th century, these large scale paintings decline because the state is no longer centralized, it is more localized polity. And when it comes into contact with Islam, it acquired a different kind of aesthetic quality and techniques. By 14th century, paper becomes very common. There is a incident which is narrated in 11th century when any letter came to the sultan's court. They would read that letter, they would wash it and keep it for next use. But by 14th century, even the sweet seller who is selling his sweets would fold it in a paper and hand it over to the customers. So, there is an increase of paper which is in circulation, and these were kingdoms which had lot of surplus wealth which came from agriculture, trade, commerce. So what they did, this excess wealth was diverted to so many other areas like arts and craft and also paintings. Now I'm only going to focus on miniature painting. The word miniature is derived from the Latin word minium, that means red lead. So, since red lead is the principal pigment which is used, it began to be applied to all these kinds of art, and the artists who were doing it were known as miniatori. Indian red and red ochre are both, oxides of iron, and they were used as pigments in these painting. In fact, when later on, the word miniatures started applying to any work of art that was in minimum size. So miniature painting really means a small size portrait or any kind of painting. When I look at Deccan, there were three major schools which developed. It starts from about 15th century and it continues to 20th century. However, in my talk, I'm only going to focus on the Golconda school and the Hyderabadi school, because when I start talking about the regional school, it will become so vast. The Golconda school really, starts around 15th century. It goes on till 16th century, and it is under the patronage of Ibrahim Qutub Shah. And you have the earliest surviving paintings which are illustrated in a manuscript called Tarife Hussain Sahi. And then we also have about other 400 miniatures which are found in another manuscript called Nujmu Ulum. And it has been kept in Chester Bitty Library in Dublin. The unfortunate part of these paintings is that many of them have been destroyed because of the time. Some of them are available only in museums abroad. So, many of these paintings are not even available to us. The second school was the Hyderabadi school, which started around 17th to 18th century. And you have, this was a period where there is a transition which is taking place. And, after the 4 decades of Mughal political domination, and the regional schools start really around 18th century. It continues till 20th century. You had a lot of these small kingdoms which came up in Karnool, Gadwal, Shorapur, Vanprasthi, and they continued till the time of the Asafzahis. Now let me talk about the Golconda school. With the transfer of Muslim population to Devgiri in 1329, the Persian culture started, moving away from the Delhi court, and it is transplanted into Deccan. But slowly, by this time, the whole Bahmani Empire disintegrates. It gets divided into these 5 kingdoms of Ahmednagar, Birar, Bidar, Bijapur, and Golconda. And again, Vijayanagar also falls down by 1565. All these dynasties got together, and they fought with Vijayanagar, and in the Talikota battle, it lost its power. So many of these artists and painters who were in these different courts, Vijayanagar court, they migrated to the Ahmednagar court. And the same thing happened in Bijapur. The Qutub Shahis were also very wealthy. They invited a large number of painters. There were various reasons why the sultans were getting the paintings done. They were very secular in their attitude. There were various, if you look at the kinds of society, it was a very sectarian kind of society that was developing based on various ethnic, religious, and linguistic and caste identities. And most of these paintings, see, the large chunk of these paintings only depict the royal splendor. So, how do you define a Deccani miniature painting? Especially if you look at, and most of them, the characteristics are same throughout. They First, to start with, they absorbed a lot of influence from the northern tradition in the pre-Mughal painting of Malwa and the Vijayanagar school of painting. They are very small in character, both in actual size and treatment. They use a lot of soft colors like pink, blue, green, brown, and you have a profuse use of gold and silver. If you look at the borders, some of the borders are such intricately done. And you have these, depiction of large plants, flowering shrubs, the magical breeze of textiles. Many times you can see these transparent draperies which these women are wearing. They have long waist sashes, conical turbans, and the hillocks are very round. If I look at the different kinds of painting, I can divide them into: first, you have a large chunk of paintings on the royalty. Then you have the Ragmala paintings, yoginis, courtesans. There are paintings of common women and European themes. Most of these paintings focus on royalty because they had come into existence due to the royal patronage. So they are depicting mostly queens, princes, and by and large, it is representing a male gaze of women. Women as an idealized symbol of the royal splendor. And as I mentioned earlier, also, all the earliest paintings are found in the Tarife Hussain Shahi. It is Queen Khanzada Humayun who wanted to perpetuate the memory of her husband Sultan Hussain Nizam Shah, and she got these paintings done. Now, if you look at this painting of Sultan Hussain Nizam Shah, who's seated on the throne, you can almost see the techniques of a fresco painting of Vijayanagar. Like I said, many of these artists were earlier working in Vijayanagar, and they carried a lot of these styles to these painting. On the top you have a blue background and the alcove which is there, and the women are the look at the way the women are depicted. They are seen as very sensuous being, and if you see the queen at the back, she is sitting one level below the sultan, and her face is covered. You cannot see her features and who she is. Another painting is where you have lot of these courtiers sitting at different levels, and the women, they are watching a dance sequence. The queen is also seated next to the sultan, but you can see her head bent. She's not obviously she is not watching the dance with open eyes. It looks that in that public space this woman is very uncomfortable. But something very interesting is that you do have lot of female portraiture in Islam. The second kind of paintings are the Ragmala paintings. When several conventional systems of music, raga, raginis, they were depicted as women. You have these paintings which are depicting them as women, and these paintings, many a time they use the couplet, the raga is written on top, and it was basically when the heart felt the need to sing rather than chant. And it also provides a lot of consolidation and women's forms of pleasure. See, this is a painting of Hindola Rag. It is from Ahmednagar in 1590 to 91. And you can see two attendants at the side. They are shooting color on both the Sultan and the Queen seated on the throne. And on top, there is a verse which is written in Sanskrit. And the Sanskrit verse says that it is springtime, there is so much white blossom, birds are in flight. So it is describing that scene in a Sanskrit couplet. And this depicts the Hindola Rag. These are the other two paintings which are depicting these ragas. And then you have another painting which depicts the Dhanashri Raga. You can see a woman, she is sitting and she is composing a love letter to her lover. And the Sanskrit verse on top says that, she is sitting on the ground wearing a red sari, and her breasts are wet with fallen tear. Obviously, her lover is not with her, and so she is crying. Again, what is very interesting here is you have a combination of the Persian techniques with Indian motifs. There are a lot of these motifs. See, the elephant is all found in many of these paintings. Again, another interesting painting is of the Gauri Ragini from Ahmednagar, where three women are depicted in a grove. It is filled with the flowers. You can see these trees as representing the whole circular mass, and the woman who's in the center is the heroine. She is also wearing mango blossom jewelry, and the other two at the side are maids. And it looks like these maids have helped her in decoration. Now, I want to point out one thing. It is obviously the women in the center is the mistress, and the other two are maids. But then, if you look at it, you can hardly see any difference. There is no class difference. They are all depicted in very sensuous forms. This is again, unfortunately, I cannot get the colored painting. I had to use a Xerox. This is the Kamgodi Ragini from Ahmednagar, again, two lovers in a garden. They are shut out from the outside world, and the lover is turning very passionately towards the woman who is turning away. And you can see a lot of these intersection of diagonal forms of arches around the lovers. They are secluded from the outside world. They are so happy in their own world. There is another by in Todi Ragni from Golconda in 1680. And she is, in the original painting, she is wearing green and orange and pink. We can only imagine it because I could only get a Xerox. And she is going around the rocky area with an ektara. There are lots of these birds and deers which follow. and it really depicts how these women are so comfortable with nature around them. There is another very interesting painting of Ragini Patmachika from Bijapur of 1595. It's in the National Museum in Delhi. You can see the artists using a lot of local styles. Maybe these are artists who are trained at the folk level. There is a lot of splendid foliage all around them. You can see the peacock in full bloom. And another very interesting painting from Salarjung Museum in Hyderabad is of the Ragini painting, where she is amidst these green foliage. She's wearing a very light yellow dress, and the flowers, the trees, the blossom is spread all around her. Another interesting painting from Salarjung is again where this Ragini painting, where she is amidst the banana trees and mangoes. See, they use it's again very interesting that many of them use mango leaves and banana leaves to banana trees to depict. Obviously, most of these painters would have been Hindus who were depicting. You can see a lot of ducks and deers who are surrounding this. This third category of paintings which we have is of the yoginis. When you look at these yogini paintings, these women have beautiful facial features. They almost look nobility. They are not almost, they look like women from noble families, but they are shown with matted hair. They are holding a musical instrument. It could be an ektara, a fan, or peacock feathers, and they wear shoes. They are also covered with lot of ornaments. They wear these tight brocaded pajama and kesa, the upper garment, long dupatta, the dress in Deccan. They have a scarf over their head. And they many a times they also apply the Kashka paint sandal. Dr. M.L. Nigam feels that most of these yoginis are from noble class, and Sherwani says that these were probably Sufi women who were roaming around the jungles all alone. And Mir Hassan Delvi also says that possibly these women were women in the court who had to observe parda, and so they come out and they move out very freely. So that's how the yogin is described. Now we have a painting from Bijapur where you have an ascetic. The women is visiting the ascetic. You have a lot of crowding in the background, and the women is almost converting the sage into an object of worship, and he gets a little embarrassed by this. And there are again women who are busy performing some manual work. But slowly, what we find is the painting is now moving away from gaudiness to simplicity. Another yogini painting is from Bijapur. This is found in Salarjung Museum. She's carrying a chauri in her hand. There is a bejeweled cap which she is wearing, and there is a long coat which is covering her. This is most probably is a princess in the garb of a yogini, and the background depiction of the scene looks very Deccani. Another painting from Salarjung. Unfortunately, see, the background, many of the background in this period has disappeared. So this is one painting which is damaged, and we do not have the Deccani background which can be visible. But again, this yogini is wearing a long jama and a waistband. There is a scarf around her head, and she's carrying a trident, a trishul in her hand, and a morchel in the left hand. And she also has applied kashka in her forehead. There is a red mark in the center if you look at it carefully. And most probably, this yogini is associated with Shaivism. There is again another painting from Bijapur where this yogini is in a jungle. She is holding a fan in one hand, and you can made of peacock feathers, and a lion is coming out. She is again very richly dressed and decorated. Another painting from Bijapur is in Salarjung, where again this yogini is sitting in the rocky surroundings along with the visitor. The the Ektara is being played by the yogini, and the visitors are listening to it. Most probably, these women who are visiting this yogini are from royal family, because in the background you can see a balcony, and there is also a male person who must have brought the balcony, but he's so curious as to what is happening. He's peeping behind the trees, and he's watching the scene quietly. Now, another kind of paintings we have are the courtesan painting. Again, this painting, we do not have anything in the background. It is from Bijapur. She's holding a beetle leaf in her hand. She is wearing gold black pajamas, and her robes are very transparent because she is a courtesan, and there is an elaborate jewelry which she is having. We also have another miniature painting showing Sultan Adil Shah with the courtesans, and you can see the luxurious lifestyle of the sultan. Many of these courtesans are drowsy with wine, and he holds the hand of one of them, who's very drowsy. You can see a large number of maids surrounding them. There are a number of eatables, drinks which are kept at the bottom. Again, you have a painting from Golconda, 1630 to 50. You can see a lot of impact of Irani impact in this painting. In fact, it has virtually translated an Ishfani work into in Indian terms. There is an azure background. She is wearing with violet and pink robes, and it is almost, you can see her flesh. She is naked till the waist, and you can see her thighs, her legs are all exposed. So now, it is because of the lot of impact of European painting. Because she's a courtesan, you could show her flesh and other things. So you can slowly see the kind of depiction that is happening. Another painting from Golconda is a courtesan. She's wearing very diaphanous robes of pink. There is a veil, and the color is green in the original one. She's holding a bird in her hand, and she's wearing the necklace of pearls, but you can almost see her breast, visible. Her dress is decorated with roses. The courtesan is depicted in a very sensuous form. The way she is dressed up. It is not covering any part of her body. It is more to accentuate her flesh and to show her body parts. Besides courtesans, you have a large number of paintings of common women, women who are working as maids, and they are, artists, they are engaged in royal service, they are performing various kinds of services. And this is a miniature painting by Ali Naqvi from Golconda, and this woman is admiring herself in a mirror. And most probably the maid must have helped her to dress up. And then, all the toiletry is still kept at the bottom. And finally, she's showing the mirror to her mistress. And obviously, it looks, the mistress is again very happy at the end result. Again, I want to draw your attention to the fact that you cannot see any class difference between the mistress and the maid who's helping her. See, both have very sensuous form. They are, wearing equal amount of jewelry, etc. There is another interesting painting of a girl who's sleeping from Golconda. And it allures to the tropical world of spring. You can almost see, feel the warm breeze outside. You can see a plantain tree. You can see that breeze blowing. There are lots of food items which are kept, and there is a plantain tree which is regarded as holy. And these kinds, you can also see a cat at the bottom. These kinds of scenes, there is a maid who is helping her, and you have more such scenes in sculpture. But then here, you have this miniature which is celebrating life. Another very interesting miniature is when they took up European themes and they try to convert them into Indian themes. See, look at the depiction of Madonna and Child. Obviously the artist is a Muslim artist who's dressed her up in Islamic clothes. But what is interesting is here the sexuality is not enhanced. The breasts now become a source of nutrition. They are fully covered, unlike the courtesans who are shown half naked. This is another painting of Madonna and Child, where there is a beautiful framed border. She is wearing a lot of jewelry and holding the child. Again, you have the Holy Family miniature from Golconda in 1630 to 35, and it has many strands of crescent moon holding Christ, and most probably they were inspired by the European engravings. And using the European portraiture, but it shows the extravaganza of the Deccani paintings. Again, you have another interesting painting from Golconda in 17th century. It shows a lot of angels and fairies. There are cryptic compositions with animal heads along with fairies. You can almost see them hanging from the trees. Most probably, it is some kind of a spiritual charm which is used for the protection of the royalty. Now, when I come to the Deccan in 17th and 18th century, there are a lot of changes which are occurring. And especially, the Vijayanagar Empire becomes very weak after 1565, especially after the Battle of Talikota. In 1574, there is a coup in Berar, and Ahmednagar invades and conquers Berar. In 1619, Bidar is annexed by Bijapur. And later on, they are conquered by the Mughal Empire. See, a lot of wars is happening. There are a lot of tussles, political tussles, which are taking place. And again, Ahmednagar, is taken over. Golconda and Bijapur are conquered by Aurangzeb in his campaign. The first half of the century, the Mughal Empire is also shrinking at this time, and you have a lot of these independent kingdoms which are emerging. In the second half, the British started creating a strong presence in the Deccan. And 1769 is again another landmark because the ruler of Iran, Nadir Shah, invades and plunders Delhi. He takes away an immense amount of wealth with them back home. And also the Afghan rulers, Ahmad Shah Abdali, invades the northern region of India. He invaded it 5 times between 1748 to 1761. Then you have a number of independent small states, regions which are emerging, the Maratha, Sikhs, Jat, and all of them, who were earlier fighting together against the Mughals, they now gain their independence. So the Deccan is in a big state of turmoil at this time. And the Hyderabad schools emerges at this time. Because what happens in 1724 when you have the Asafzai kingdom which emerges, again, you have the Hyderabad school emerges. You have number of these paintings. The style is almost the same. The same kind of themes you can see on royalty, royal life. And they also try to show the whole variation in lifestyle, the whole pomp and glory, which indicates the patronage which these which these emperors were providing, and the resources that were available. And the rulers took lot of interest in artistic pursuits at this time. They invited people, painters from different regions. And 17th century Deccani painting, if you see, it is very much influenced by the context in which it comes. There is a lot of influence of the new Iranian mode, which are associated with the Safavid paintings of the Sheikh Abbasi and his sons, Al Naqvi and Muhammad Taqi, who come here. Then you have the whole social picture of Hyderabad, which is a combination of different kinds of people with different ethnic backgrounds, different communities who come and settle here. And there is a lot of intermingling and intersynthesis among people which takes place. In fact, the whole Hyderabadi culture develops into something which is called the composite culture of Deccan. It's called the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. And you have a lot of the whole atmosphere of equality, liberty, and harmony which is provided by these sultans, and they contribute a lot. They were making donations to different kinds of temples, to different Sufi khankas. They encourage art and literature. They also encourage a large number of scholars. So now when you come see, the painting is becoming more and more refined as we are moving to the Hyderabadi school. Here you have a noble woman. She is represented with a deer. The deer is obviously her pet because she is holding on to it. And the whole headgear is beautifully done. Her jewelry is all depicted, and it shows the richness of the Deccan region. Many of these paintings focus on the royal life. Again, you have a painting where this noble royal woman is in conversation with her maid, and you can almost see the again the banana leaf in the background, and plantain, trees in the background. There is a maid who is there, and it looks as if they are discussing something very urgent. It is executed around 800 in a Hyderabadi style, and it is done in a very simplistic fashion. And it almost, the way the lines are done, it look appears that it is a folk artist who has done it. This painting is in the private collection. And again, you have another painting where several royal women in palace, they are surrounded in a garden, and it is also on dated around 18th century. This painting by, it is said that it depicts Chand Bibi who's sitting in a rock. It's done in opaque watercolor on paper, most dated from Patna in 1780. It is found in Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and you can see a number of elephants that are coming, and she's sitting and most probably resting. You also have a number of Ragmala paintings. See, now the painting is becoming more and more refined. You can it this is mid 18th century in Todi Ragini. A girl is playing veena to a male and two female antelopes. And again, showing a lot of love, the allegory of power of love, where they are almost listening to what she is playing. There is another painting of Rag Kakuba from Golconda, dated 1720. It is in the National Museum. You can again see, women seated in the garden. And you have the Banga Ragini from 18th century. Again, the border is done in paper and gold, and it's beautifully depicting these two women. You also have the Rag Vibhasha painting from Hyderabad, dated 1700. It is found in the National Museum in New Delhi. Another thing, a difference which I see from the Golconda school to Hyderabad school, if you observe, many of these characters are seated outside. You have a large number of painting on rooftops outside. Earlier you don't have paintings on the rooftop, etc. See, again, they are seated. The Rag Malkos in Golconda, 1725. This is also found in the National Museum. There is a banana tree at the back. There is a canopy, red canopy, in under which they are seated. There are two people who are playing instruments at the bottom. Two women who are, showing the chori around. There is another very interesting painting of a yogini from Bijapur. This is done by a painter from Dublin. It is dated 1605. You can see the extravagant dress. It is as if she's talking to that mina. And the whole painting is very European in its appearance. Look at the background. In no way does it show the Deccani background. The castle behind looks almost like a European castle, and you can almost feel the Renaissance painting in this. The plants which are shown, they are more like the herbs which had come to Deccan via China. It almost look like the Chinese vases that had come through seaport. Many of the Dutch merchants had brought these vases into the Deccan at this time, and this painting shows that impact. You also have another yogini painting from 17th century from Bijapur. She's wearing a tight pajama and a very elongated dress and a brocaded dupatta. She's also, wearing a lot of jewelry of pearls, and there is a marble paper border. it really, the painting is becoming more refined. It is also, the whole lush background of the earlier Golconda school is now, the romanticism of the earlier period is now replaced by more simplicity. And in this painting, again, a painting from Salarjung, which I said 17th century. You can see the Yogini, having a morchel in her hand. There is a girdle which is hung to her waist. She's wearing rubies and necklace. And most probably, this is a princess who's dressed like a yogin. Again, you have another Yogini painting from Bijapur. It is late 18th century. And she is again amidst a very thick green background. There are flowering and non flowering shrubs. And it almost looks like an Islamic princess. Again, if you look at the courtesan, see how they are accentuating the flesh. You can see a, reclining courtesan, most probably 17th century. And again, you can see the gold background, which is there. And she is, the wine cups in her hand. And the painting is somehow becoming more and more simplistic. This is a painting of a common woman where she is again helping her mistress to dress up. The girl is admiring herself. There is a red canopy and background which is depicting the easy pace. Again, you have a painting of a girl from Golconda who's admiring her beauty. She has narrow waist and very voluptuous breast, and she's wearing very transparent robes. There is rich jewelry which she's wearing, and the overall style is in Golconda with its profuse use of red, orange, blue, and feathery trees. Now look at this. This is a maid who's carrying a fruit basket. She's so richly decorated. There are fruits on top of her basket, and she is also wearing equal amount of jewelry. And it appears to be a very sensuous kind of a painting. Again, you have a painting depicting a woman with her maids. The princess in the company of her maids. It has a lavish border which is done, but the painting is again in typical Hyderabadi style. You can observe this in the costumes, and most probably it belongs to the third quarter century of 18th century. This is again between 1700 to 1720, where the women are again seated on a terrace and they are busy drinking and eating. They are, one of them is drowsy with wine. These are number of women who are serving them. And you have another, maybe the mistress is sitting. There are women who are playing the ektaras. You can see a peacock sitting either side, but the two maid who are sitting on both sides, as if they are ready to carry out orders by the mistress. Again, another painting on the roof is of a serving woman who's carrying a child in her arms, and you have maids who are ready to provide service. Another very interesting painting is of a sultan who is, you have a lot of these maids who are serving him. But this painting is interesting because you see a chair for the first time. See, earlier sultans are only using masnad. They are seated on the ground. But here, because of, Europeans are coming, furniture is coming into the Deccan, you can see the sultan seated in a chair. Again, you have another painting on the rooftop of 1750, where this is in the National Museum in New Delhi, where these ladies are having a wine party and they are seated on the roof. Again, another painting, almost, the women talking with a confidant in the National Museum. Again, a woman is visiting a saint in 1750 and she is observing, austerity. Here you have another painting. This is at Sotheby's Museum, most probably late 17th, 18th century, a woman, lady having a bath in the Deccan. After Hyderabad school disappears by the beginning of 18th century, you have a group of artists, who are known as motis. They had worked with a large number of these local rulers. They started painting a number of figures, portraits from the court and deities. And all those who spoke Telugu were called Raju, Razu, Tingara, or Chitrakara, and they resided somewhere near the palaces. By 1775, a number of artist families were stationed in Hyderabad, and they painted a number of themes of Deccan. And they were also painting a number of native rulers, natural lives, and natural deities. So, one painting of that period is you have the Megha Raga, which is painted. It is, dated around 19th century, and you can see the refinement. The palace in the background again looks very European. You can see the number of birds at the bottom. So therefore, I would like to conclude by summing up what I said, that one, if you look at the Deccan region at that time, it was starting you had it was characterized by a multi-centered power structure, and it had a tendency to propagate military ethics. But then there is also cultural efflorescence. The fact that they were busy fighting with one another, there were so many wars that were going on, but cultural efflorescence also happened. There is a lot of inflow of different people, ambassadors, mendicants, merchants, artists. They were all coming into this region in the Deccan, and they brought in new styles and symbolism. And there is a lot of surplus which has been produced in the economy through agriculture, trade, commerce, and all this gets diverted into painting and miniature painting. And by and large, how women are depicted, that you can see women in royalty, in court scenes, which are again male basins of power. But you have, other kinds of women who are depicted in raginis, yoginis, as courtesans in European themes. You have a lot of common women that are depicted. And it is interesting that by and large, these paintings are only depicting these women in very sensual and exquisite glamour. And their depiction envisage eternally a very ideally, model conceptual figure of these women. They may belong to different ranks, different status, but all this is blurred. And what really comes forward is this whole voluptuous character, the whole feminine form which is depicted. Therefore, it cannot be denied that the basic motive behind these paintings was the idea that the women were objects of sensuality and entertainment for men. Many of these paintings constructed, the whole cultural construction of these ideal female, young, shapely, sensuous, carefully and scantily dressed. They are made with the latest, very fashionable in their appearance. They are very glamour. Whether it is the royal women or whether it is the maiden, courtesan, or yogini, all of them are shown to be very glamorous. And the reason they are being portrayed are because they are providing delight to men, both in terms of sexual and visual pleasure. They explore the contours of women's body through these different shapes, contours, and color. Many of these paintings are part of illustration in so many manuscripts, etc. So, but it is interesting that the whole depiction of women changes, and the story changes completely when the woman is shown as a mother. Then the contours disappear and the drapes appear. Now the breasts are no longer an object of desire, but they become a provider of nurturance. And hence, what is important is the meaning of a painting is produced by the subject content of these paintings. And women are inserted here into the subject by male stream, male perspective, and they bear specific, prior meaning as to why they are there. The main purpose by which these women are put into the miniature is, like I've mentioned, it is for the pleasure of these European friends who are visiting, these noblemen, the merchants, the traders, who are all vying to get these and have a collection of these. But to me, these paintings become a very important source of historical interpretation. the whole royal desire shaping the artist's hand, which is wielding the brush. And having said all that, how these women are depicted, how they are painted in sensuous form, this cannot disqualify these miniatures, because they become a very potential source of historical interpretation, because every source of history is embedded with its own historical frame. It represents a certain way, it has a certain way of representing reality. What these paintings do is they depict the different domains which a woman normally occupies at home, in the bed, in front of the mirror, the mother involved with the child, the freedom of a yogini roaming around the jungles, the courtesan, showing her sensuous body to everyone. So the artists are also very clear as to the women's restricted spaces. The royal women, though they are in a public space in the court, but they have very restricted spaces. They cannot even lift their head, they cannot even watch it. So they are depicted either with their heads bent, or they are not even looking straight at what is happening. So if one is careful enough with these miniatures, it unfolds before us the whole world of women's work activity, and it gives us a scintillating picture of the life of women, and the various realms. It, to me, this is a gold mine for the reconstruction and representation of women's history. Like I said, in the absence of any kind of sources, because all these sources only depict male activity, male doings, male achievements, and there is hardly anything about women which is there in many of our sources. So these paintings become a very good source to depict women's history in this period. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And we have a question from the audience. Mr. Sagnik Sarkar has asked, how are the Deccan school of miniature different from the earlier Mughal miniature art form? What is
Yeah.
the difference?
Like I mentioned in the beginning, yes, portraits are there in the earlier school also. What happened in the earlier this thing was, you had large scale paintings. They are more like frescoes, temple walls. Vijayanagar period also had some of these large scale paintings. But here, one, the size becomes very small, the treatment is very small. And second, the depiction of the Deccani landscape, the dress of these women, the jewelry of these women, the background, all these are typical Deccani style in that period.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And the next question is from Shreyashi Chaudhary. She said, thank you, ma'am, for the enriching presentation. Were there any women painters during this time?
We hear of one or two women painters, but it's very difficult. We have really not. Some painters have left their names, but by and large, it's really very difficult to hear of these women painters. It's we don't know. Many of them were not even writing their names. If you look at Britain in 18th century, also women were not using their names to write books. A woman was not supposed to be intelligent, and so they were using a lot of pen names. They were using male names. So you don't have many women's name which is there in these paintings.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Is there any question from the audience? Okay. So I think that is for today. So now we are closing this session. First of all, thank you so much, ma'am, to provide this fruitful information. This is very chronological, and we have all the audience are also praising it much, that they have encountered all the pictorial narrative, they can say, they have. And now, during the closing of the session, I also present my sincere thanks to the chairman of the society, Mr. Nityanand Singh, and secretary, Miss Manita Pande, and all the director generals and directors of the society. I would like to thank Miss Mrinali Singh, Virasat Mitra, for introducing today's session for our viewers. and to Mr. Azad Hind Gulshan Nanda for providing technical support throughout the session. I am very thankful to all the Virasat Mitras and my respected audience for sparing their valuable times to join the session. Thank you so much, all. Have a night. Sorry, a very good night. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being part of your group.